Okay, so my name is Jon Case. I am a director of ARRCC in Cape Town, South Africa. Our company has been in operation for just over 20 years. I myself have been with the company for 17 years next year. So I really began at the beginning stages of our business. A little bit of structure about how our office actually operates is we have two departments. We have an interior architecture and architecture department, and we have an interior decor department, which handles all of the decors, accessories, etc., etc. So, so we've worked alongside Sayota, which is our architectural sort of big brother, the kind of work we're doing at the moment is we're doing a lot of international work. Which is mostly high-end residential and hospitality.
Like how did you enter into this architecture and
Sure.
interior designing?
Sure. I personally, my journey started at school. I had an interest in drawing and art. That was my first intro to design. Because I really loved the idea of how things were put together and how things were made. So I've always been a bit of a maker. I have a workshop and I used to build things and, all these kinds of strange inventions. And I think that really allowed me to sort of develop a mechanical mind of how things are put together, how things are created, how things are designed from scratch. And that's really what began me on the design process. I initially wanted to do architecture. Where I applied at our university here in Cape Town, and I was set to go ahead with the architectural studies, but something about it just kind of felt like I needed something a little bit more colorful and a little bit more product related, and that's where I found this gap between architecture and interior design, which was interior architecture, where I could really kind of get involved in much more finer detail, so, designing beautiful bars and interior spaces and as right down to furniture and decor. So really the scope that I followed sort of covered a much broader spectrum of design rather than just architecture or just interior design. So I really liked that I could slot in between those two and have a much broader scope of work. And I think that's really what drew me to interior architecture.
And since today you are running this international architecture and interior designing studio, how much of your personal time does go into the designing part?
All of it, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I always say to people that are interested in becoming designers and architects that it's not really a career, it's not really a job. It really is a lifestyle. It is something that you do all the time. You eat, sleep, drink, think. It's something that becomes a part of your personality and a part of your own personal style. And I think that's something that I love about the creative industries is that, every day is not necessarily going to do your 8 till 5. It's more about, progression and growing every day and expressing yourself as much as you can.
Yes.
And that really boils down to the clothes you wear, it spills over in all facets of your life. And I think that's what's so great about being a designer.
When you came out of university, when you came out of your from where you have completed your study, your school, so you
Yeah.
started, did you started working with some other studio? Like how did your professional journey begin?
So I did, when I was in my final year of studies, I did some private work for some projects, some people that I knew. Obviously being young and very inexperienced, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. And then in my final year exhibition, one of the senior designers with Stephen Anthony's office came to my exhibition. And they really liked my work, and I went for an interview that December of 2005 or 2004, I can't remember, I managed to get a job, and
Okay.
really I started as a junior designer. I worked 7 days a week and long hours and lots of late nights, but I had this passion and drive to build something, build this company into something new, and at that point in time there were 5 of us.
Okay.
So it started very small. I mean, we were taking on whatever jobs we could get, and all of them were local. We were all working mostly in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And where the business started growing was obviously we started we started creating, interiors and buildings that people really started responding to. And because Cape Town is such a international city, we have a lot of tourism and a lot of people from Europe and the US and the Middle East that come here on holiday, that we ended up doing some houses for international clients in Cape Town.
Okay.
And then built a relationship with them. And basically what happened was our first project, one of our first international projects, were some houses and some projects in Dakar for a client that had a project that we did for him in Cape Town. And he liked our work so much that he said, well, why don't you do my project in Dakar? And we, immediately jumped on it and said, of course we'll do it. And then that came with a whole lot of new challenges that we weren't ready for. But that's really how it started. I mean, we started connecting with international people at home. And then then I did my first project in Paris, which was my first European experience, which was a real learning curve. I mean, working in a city like Paris is, with the heritage councils, with working with local architects, there's a whole different ball game with regards to the weather, with regards to, what you can and can't do with the structures. So really it was a trial by error. I mean, we started the process very naively, but we learned so much, and then we just started growing. And people said, well, they saw we're doing a place in Paris. Would you like to do a place in Barcelona? So this is kind of really how our story started unraveling. And we've always, I mean, throughout the last sort of 2 decades, we've always thought, like, do we open an office overseas? Do we, we're doing so much work there, but for some reason, and the way the world has turned out, especially with the way things are at the moment with 2020 and COVID and lockdowns, and is that we'd already been gearing ourselves up to work remotely. Because we're located in Cape Town, at the bottom of Africa, at the bottom of the world, we've always been forced to design and create a process that allows us to work all over the world. And that really started out us totally redefining the way that we work. So we kept our offices in Cape Town. We haven't opened any offices abroad, and purely because we just love the idea of the control of the quality that we were busy with, and then structured our offering and our services to work internationally and to work remotely, which has worked very well for us.
Mm. John, because of House Galleria now, I got it's my blessing that I got a chance to meet so many interesting people like you. So a couple of weeks ago, I met one Mexican architect, and he was telling me the same thing. He said that there are very few practices in the world who are doing international projects, and still they manage to maintain the quality. And one of your greatest qualities that you are doing international projects all over the world, and still you have maintained that quality. And do you think that are there any conscious decisions which you are taking to make sure that the quality which is going remains the same, whether you are doing one project or 1,000 projects in 1 year?
Look, I mean, we have become, I think it's fair to say that we're human, and, humans have limitations. So ultimately, we are quite selective about the work that we do. And I think we're fortunate enough to have earned our stripes working for many, many years. To be in a position where we want to take on projects with like-minded clients, with, and it's not necessarily about budget, and it's not necessarily about how big the project is. I mean, we're doing some smaller scale projects overseas, but there's just the connection with our clients. They understand our look, they understand the aesthetic that we are putting through, but at the same time, I mean, we're able to get quite close to these people and start developing their own language for their project. Because if you look at all of our work, there are signatures, but each project is totally unique. So a big part of keeping that quality and that control, to a very high standard is everything is done through the directorship. So for example, I'm involved in the beginning stages of every project. So right down to the finest detail. And that way we're able to have a smaller group of people, a smaller team, which is a very, very highly trained and very qualified young designers. And we're able to then kind of sort of program ourselves throughout different stages of the project. So I know that I'm involved in the conceptual stage in those 5 projects. Once those get through the conceptual stage, they get passed on to the development phase, and the more technical staff get involved. And so we have an ethos that allows us to work on multiple projects at any given time. But I absolutely, I mean, the way I see it is that we never want to be so big that I never have a chance to look through everything, purely because it should have my signature. It should have our signature as ARRCC, and all the directors would feel the same. I mean, we're all heavily involved in the work that we do, so I don't think we'd ever change that. I think it would always be part of our methodology.
And is it the reason that you are not expanding your offices internationally? You are still keeping your office in Cape Town?
Well, look, to some extent, yes. I mean, in the past, I mean, but pre-COVID, we were talking about at some point potential of opening offices in other countries, especially like hubs like Dubai or Los Angeles or or London. But there was always these challenges of how do we keep the quality up? Who do we employ to run those offices? I mean, but the strange thing is that the world kind of has changed so much in the last 8-9 months that we're in a position now where we're starting to think much more broadly, that we don't potentially have to open offices overseas, but potentially we could employ staff overseas.
Yes.
We don't have to have a bricks and mortar office space. And that's the great thing and the exciting thing about what COVID has done for the world, is that it's allowed us to actually trust and let go a little bit. And actually allowed us to, realize that we don't have to all be sitting in the same building to achieve incredible quality. I mean, before COVID, I mean, I was traveling many times a year. So, I was always just jumping on a plane and flying to LA or flying to Miami or flying to Spain or Portugal, wherever it may be. So you realize you're a day away from everywhere. You're not, it's not such a train smash to get on a plane and go and meet clients and check quality of projects. So I think we've seen the world shrink a lot in the last 9 months. It's everything, for me at least, feels a little bit more connected.
Do you see any long-term changes which will which we can see as an evolution in this industry because of pandemic? What was happening right now?
Look, I think yes. I think it has to. I think the world that we once knew, at least for the foreseeable future, will be different. I'm not saying that it won't go back to a usual arrangement, but I do think that this whole pandemic has really showed people that we can work remotely. We can work from home. We can work from anywhere. And I think unknowingly our office has been doing that for a long time, as I mentioned earlier. But I think the industry has to evolve. I think the industry has to be able to be a lot more flexible. I think you have to reach further than you were used to doing. So as a designer working in a large city and focusing only really on the areas surrounding you, I think you're going to have to start looking more broadly. You're going to have to start trying to breach out and connecting with others. Because the wonderful thing that we've experienced, and I think we're living proof of it, is that when we started working in places like Los Angeles or New York or Miami, you kind of have this sort of insecurity that, we're South Africans, what do we know about design? I mean, we've got these big, American firms and we've got competitors that we've been drooling over for years that we're now competing against. And you kind of realize that you have something different to offer. Your country and your upbringing and your culture, brings something new to the table, which all of our clients have really loved. I mean, they've enjoyed working with a different thought process, with a different set of design teams, with a different cultural background, because it brings such a richness to the project. And I think no matter where you're situated, you can bring so much more of your own personality to something abroad than someone locally might be able to. And I think that's really something that is a reality and not a pie in the sky kind of thinking. It's something that is a reality.
Yes.
So I would encourage all designers to start reaching as far abroad as they can.
But look, so many of our viewers are artists, designers, and they all are looking forward to build their own practices, their own brands. And since you have done an amazing job in building your practice, your brand, so what would you like to share, not just from a perspective of a designer, but also from the perspective of someone like an entrepreneur, like you have built this amazing practice? Like,
yes.
Is there anything you can share on that?
Look, I think to make it in this industry, it really does require a relentless passion. It's something that I mean, if you just look at the way the world is today with social media and Instagram, and everything is so instant, and everything is, I mean, I look at some of these design related websites and blogs, and I often wonder, how involved these people are in design, but because making it as a designer is not easy, to be able to land a project, to be able to design it to an adequate level, to be able to make sure that client comes back to you with the next project, it takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work, a lot of research, and a very, very organized system. I think if I could, give anybody advice, is just put so much time into your design process. An endless timeline doesn't exist. I mean, every project has deadlines, but structure yourself in a way where you're able to give back 30% of your day to developing the company itself. Rather than just spending the entire day working on a deadline. You need to put time aside to develop your systems, develop your process, develop your technology, train your staff, encourage your staff to be part of your process. I mean, everybody that works at ARRCC, it sounds a little cheesy, but we call it, they have the ARRCC factor. They have this thing that is not learned at a university. It's this hunger to do more, to learn more. And I think there's always that quote about leadership where it's like, good leadership, allows people to dream bigger and allows people to learn faster and allows people to, and I think that really comes from a place of, anybody can, or not anybody, but a lot of people will work really, really hard, but sometimes it's in the wrong direction. Sometimes that work has to be introspective too. You have to be able to work on your company. You have to be able to encourage your people and motivate your people. Because if you get followers and you get people that buy into your brand, you've doubled your workforce. You have people that are like-minded. You have people that you start attracting like-minded people as well, which is, where we are at the moment, where people want to come and work for us because they feel a connection to the work that we do. I mean, and it's like we do a lot of it, and I always say, real people do real design, and I mean, if I look at the work that we do, I mean, we're designing these, multi-million-dollar villas and big hotel projects and these expensive, kind of this luxury lifestyle. But I mean, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a small fishing village in Cape Town, South Africa, and we all come from humble beginnings, and we all come from a place where it's achievable. Nobody gave this to us on a silver platter and said, "There's your opportunity." It came through many, many years of hard work and sacrifice, and a little bit of risk taking as well. You've got to sometimes do some work for free in the beginning stages to get your name out there, to get onto to just be able to share on whatever social medias, you share your work and show people what you're capable of. One other tip I would suggest is always, right from the beginning, look out for collaboration. Sometimes you can work with, so if you're a young designer and you've managed to get this one project, try and find a local artist, try and find, a local tradesperson, try and find a story that you can tell. Because that makes your design so much richer. And I think that's another big thing of what we try to do. I mean, we're always looking for opportunities to work with other designers and other architects and all of a sudden your friend group and your colleague and your peer group starts growing and growing and growing. And it takes time. I mean, people must be patient. I mean, the world is so instant. But I do think that, putting the time aside and starting to work at your own brand is super, super, super critical.
And Jon, you just mentioned that everyone should dedicate 30% of their working day time into building the brand, building the processes, and in a way creating the system which needs to be there in the place. And was that always there in your personality, or did you develop that, or like was there a conscious decision to do this?
I think it was. I think from when I started, I mean, Mark Riley was my mentor when I started, and he's now my business partner. And Mark, had this incredible ability to organize and remember things, from years back. I mean, he's just got this incredible mind to be able to structure things in a way that was easily accessible, and be able to recall and learn from the mistakes we were making. But I think we weren't consciously saying, right, that amount of time must be placed for development. We were doing it subconsciously. So we were very lucky that we stumbled on this this logic by mistake. I mean, what we would do every Friday is we would stop working at 2 o'clock, and we would spend the rest of Friday filing and cleaning up the office and arranging samples and just getting everything into a very orderly fashion. Remember, creative people are generally quite messy people. We're generally a little bit unstructured because we're creative thinkers, and the desks are crazy and there's paper everywhere. And, so it kind of started with just even cleaning our space and organizing our space better. And then once we started doing that, we started then setting up the way we save emails, and that then turned into how we file imagery. And all of a sudden it starts developing into this system that starts becoming the backbone of everything that we do. I mean, for example, when we're now working with a client overseas, we're able to recall any bit of information that was ever sent to us, that was sent to them. We're able to lead them through the design process purely because our filing system and the way that we work is structured and organized. It allows you to think creatively and put less time into organizational sort of skills because it's set up in the system. So I think, yes, absolutely. As much time as you can give to the office and give back to setting up your systems and your design process, 100% valid. It is so critical.
And do you believe that the modern tools which exists for certainly we can say social media or something like that, do you think that these things today are very helpful in building the brand or building the studio out there?
Yes, I do. Of course. I mean, when we started out, there was no social media. I mean, we were getting out through magazines mostly. I mean, people had to buy a magazine to see our work or go to our website. That obviously was live. But I mean, in the last 20 years, I mean, I think the first time we got onto a design blog really is where our business started changing. I mean, I was a big fan of a blog called Cool Hunter at the time. This was about 12 years ago. And Cool Hunter was showing all this really avant-garde, really new sort of work. And I said to my colleagues at the time, I said, well, let's write them an email and show them our work. And our website went up. They published one of our projects, and our website activity went up 300% in 4 hours.
Oh God!
So to just show you the power of being able to get to people, but that was pre-Instagram. So I definitely think if you use social media correctly and you use it to tell a story, rather than just a nice picture of a building you designed. But telling a story and showing people behind the scenes, people are responding to that now. People want to see the people behind the buildings, the stories that people, the staff that we have, the journeys that we go through as a business. And I think that's really where you start getting real followers, people that really love your work and people that are positive. And social media can be brutal as well. I mean, you post something that someone doesn't like and you get hateful comments. But I mean, our social media, we've built a following of positive followers, of people that keep coming back to us. And that's all through just sending out the right message and communicating as much as possible.
And as a designer, when you're, as you mentioned earlier, that we need to be passionate with whatever we are doing. So how much do you think we can offer as a designer if we are coming or if we have knowledge of multiple disciplines? Suppose if I am an interior designer and also I'm having the knowledge of how we make sculptures, and I have knowledge of some other things also. So like in your perspective, how much is the importance as a designer to have the knowledge of multiple disciplines?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where my whole life has been centered around, is that, I'm a very, I spend a lot of time learning as much as I can about various trades. I mean, from building automobiles to motorcycles to fashion to sneakers to, and all of it gives you a much more rounded approach. I mean, sometimes, in the previous project that we were busy with, I found inspiration in a pair of sneakers. If you're able to open your mind up to a lot of the creative fields, I definitely think it'll stand you in good stead. It allows you to think more openly, to solve problems in different ways, and just become more worldly. A big part of what we do is, we always say, it's like, speaking the right language and using the right words. And that comes from reading, and that comes from, experiencing, whether it's poetry or music or whatever it may be, is just being able to communicate with people in a way that tells your story, that sells your product. And I think that's a big part of being a designer as well, is, get your vocabulary right, spend time learning you know, and using great influences. I mean, we've got some of the most incredible designers at our fingertips. I mean, all you have to do is jump on the internet and you can research any designer that ever lived. And so I'd encourage people to do that. You know, as you said, I mean, like art and sculpture, and, you know, research artists, research sculptors, research artisans or furniture designers, because they're going to enrich your design at the end of the day. People are going to understand the lingo that you're speaking, and the more knowledgeable you are, the better your design is going to be ultimately.
Yes. And John, like, what is your process for designing? Suppose if I am a client and I am coming to ARRCC for designing a project for me, like how do you begin the entire process to deliver that kind of end result, what you are delivering at the moment?
So our process always starts, well, what we call in our stage one of our projects is called appraisal and definition. And that stage of the project is really gathering as much information about the project as possible. There's no point designing anything until you fully understand the site, you fully understand the client brief, you understand, you know, the parameters around to which your client, you know, what the usage of that project is going to be. For example, you know, when we start a project, we have a number of questionnaires that we sit with the client and we run through immense detail as much as we can to really get to know them. Because remember, when you're doing architecture and interiors, you're designing very personal spaces. You're designing spaces for people. So we start with a process which is basically what I call, or what is called, human-centric design, which really evolves around the person that's going to be using that building. You know, how they live, when they get up in the morning, you know, what kind of spaces do they like, what don't they like, what colors they like. You know, sometimes and also it's got a lot to do with being brutally honest with your client and saying, you know, what is the purpose of this building? Is it a big show off? Is it something you want to wow your friends with? Is it something that you want to have ultimate privacy? These are the kind of questions that designers must ask, because that first stage of the project is, as I said, gathering all of the information. And then you start doing your research. I mean, I've done projects in India, for example, where we had to design using Vastu principles. And, you know, these are the kind of things that you don't know it off the bat. You know, we have to do the research and actually start understanding the psyche of our client. And I think that really is another part of my job that I really love. You know, because you end up engrossing yourself in history and culture. And, you know, I mean, we do projects in places like Moscow and Russia, and we do places in you know, as I said, we've done some work in Delhi and India, to the Middle East, to Far East. And each place has its own set of principles and its own set of challenges. So that first part of the project is really understanding as much as you can, and asking a lot of questions. It's very, very important to ask a lot of questions.
Yes, what you just mentioned, that suppose when you are designing in India, you have to deal with the Vastu, and when you're designing in Moscow, you have to deal with something else, and you need to ask a lot of questions to get your research done. Do you think that as a designer, you should always make sure that there is a curious child stays inside you, so that you are always curious
100%,
about?
100%. The curiosity is that's what starts everything, to be honest. You know, and I like the sentiment that you mentioned of the sort of childlike, you know, want of knowing. And I think that really, I mean, for example, I mean, the project that I did in India was my first project where I had to design using Vastu principles. And we were very fortunate enough to have a Vastu expert in India that was able to work with us and coordinate with us. And I must say, I mean, I now use some of those principles in other projects that aren't even Vastu related, because some of them are incredibly beautiful sentiments. They really are great design tools. And you know, so you evolve as a designer. Your experience level grows. Your own personal taste grows. And I think you know, every place that you go to, there's always something new to learn. I mean, when we're doing work, for example, we've done a lot of work in Central, East, and West Africa. And the culture there is so diverse, and it's such a rich culture that you want to tap into it. You want to start drawing energy from the local city, from its surroundings, from the rhythm of the places that you're in. And I mean, that's really ultimately what you're trying to do. You're trying to personify a feeling into a structure, which is no easy task. It comes with a lot of mental stress, but it's also a very rewarding journey, I would say.
Yes. And John, you mentioned that you did your first project in Europe was the project you did in Paris. So would you like to
Yes.
share a story of how ARC landed up with that project?
Okay, so the client of that project actually did a project in Cape Town as well,
Okay.
and he was from Dakar, from Senegal. Being French speaking, he spent a lot of his personal time in Paris, and he bought a penthouse. Well, it was actually two apartments in the 16th arrondissement, which is near the Eiffel Tower. So we went from Cape Town to one of the most sought after locations in Paris, which was, I mean, I remember getting off the plane, and it was my first international business trip. And getting off the plane and walking into Paris, we came out at the Arc de Triomphe out of the subway, and it was this pinch yourself moment. It was this like, how did we get here? And then, we did that project. It took us 2 years to get the project off the ground, and I'd say probably 3 years to get it to reality. But yeah, we worked with a local French architect, a very small office, but really, really lovely people. And that's also what we found is that, working with people around the world, I mean, we've worked with architects in so many other countries. Design and architecture is such a multinational language. No matter what your history is, no matter what your culture is, you can connect, with these people from an intellectual level and from a design level. And I've made friends with people that I'll have for the rest of my life doing this work,
Yes.
and that's just because of our love for design and architecture. And I think that's really where, you start growing that base, as I mentioned earlier.
Yes, and this story just brought me to what you just said 15 minutes ago, that as an architect or as a designer, it is very important to collaborate with people, because that's how you grow. And do you think that in this industry of designing, and especially in this industry of designing, that we need to be a very open-minded person, that we are collaborating with a lot of people, we are networking ourselves with a lot of renovators, real estate developers, and a lot of other
Correct.
architects?
Yes, correct, 100%. And I think, I mean, the collaboration part of it really is, and if you look at the positive sides, I think, look, I'm speculating, but in the past, a lot of architects and designers have had a lot of ego and a lot of, this indication of like, this is my project and this is my vision. But I think when you get past that level and you move on to another level where you're very confident in what you can bring to the table, you actually open yourself up a lot more to collaboration. And I think, we've always had a very open-minded approach. I think because we've always felt like a little bit like the underdog, so we've always had this open-minded approach to working with other architects and designers and artists. And as soon as you let go and you allow people to do what they do best, it enriches the whole project and ends up benefiting you in the end anyway. So I would give the people or any designer or architect the advice that collaboration allows you to really expand to their fan base as well. So if
Yes.
I design a project for example, I've worked with an architect firm in Miami, and they've got a great Instagram following, and we're now working with one of the biggest architects in LA. And I mean, their Instagram and their social media following is massive, and so if you can collaborate with people like this, you end up sort of taking over their Instagram and your Instagram, and you come together and you really kind of create something new and something bigger than yourself. And I think that's what collaboration allows you to do. It allows
Yes.
you to connect with others, to share with others, and to grow with others as well.
John, there is so interesting about interviewing people like you, because you have so much, much, much more to offer than the usual people we meet in our daily lives. That you have experience of media, you have experience of business, you have experience of design. And when you are sharing all of these thoughts, I am, after word by word, I feel so blessed that I am having this chance to interview you. And do you know
Thank
when
you.
and one question which I want to ask related to collaboration, that you just mentioned, that when you are working with someone in LA or somewhere else, do you feel that, okay, if you are not as big as you are approaching the potential collaborator, that do you feel some kind of hesitation in your brain, that, okay, if I'm going to approach it, something?
Yeah. Look, sometimes, I mean, I think it's human nature. I mean, unless you're a international established name in architecture and design, I mean, I think anybody, I mean, I still certainly get the butterflies in my stomach when I've got a big meeting with a you know, big client or another architect or someone that I admire. The strange thing is well, I personally, I'm only speaking for myself, but I never really have gotten used to that. It's something that, but I think that's what gives me that drive. That's what gives me that excitement. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, waiting to open a gift from somebody. It's this idea of not knowing what's in front of you.
Yes.
And I must say, I've been pleasantly surprised, you know, on all the collaborations we've done. You know, you realize that the people opposite the table from you are just the same as you are. And, you know, that we're all in this wonderful industry of design together. And I think, yeah, I think it's a good thing to have butterflies. I think it's a good thing to have that feeling. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps your wits about you. You know, because running a business in design is not easy. I mean, you do have to stand up for yourself, and you do have to, you know, make sure that you look after your team and look after your client. You know, so you've got to be tough, and you do have to develop a slightly thicker skin as well. You know, so I mean, a big part of, and this is bringing me to another point, but a big part of design is criticism. You know, I mean, you know, anyone will tell you if you're studying architectural design, I mean, your crit sessions with your lecturers are sometimes quite brutal. You know, your design maybe isn't up to scratch, but if you think that's bad, wait till you sit opposite a client. I mean, it's a lot more, you know, the pressure's on to deliver, you know, so you really have to do the research. You really have to be able to take criticism, and move forward and keep developing your design and get better and better and better. And I think that also comes, just one last point on this section, is that you have to be self-critical as well. You have to look at your design when you think you're finished and say, like, you know, is that good enough? Can I do better? You know, can we make this, you know, this process faster? Why does it take so long? You know, how can we get this thing to be a lot more fluid and streamlined? And I think you've got to continuously question everything, because that's how you develop as a designer. That's how you become more efficient.
And do you think that when you are going to collaborate with someone, like, you should always prepare yourself that, okay, I need to be very clear about what I can offer unique to the other person?
Yeah, look, I think your work should speak for itself to some extent. I think, you know, a picture says 1,000 words, as they say.
Yes.
You know, so to be able to show people the work that you're able to achieve, you know, does a lot of talking for you. But, you know, learning sales pitch and learning how to, you know, captivate people is also a skill that's worth learning.
Yes.
You know, if you can find time to do a Toastmasters course or a speech taking course,
Yes.
you know, because those are the kind of things that grow confidence, and confidence is something that I think comes with experience. I mean, obviously somebody who's just starting out has to learn all these things, but you know, confidence is very, very important. There's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. There's a very, very big difference.
Yes.
You know, so and confidence always draws from your experience. It draws from the way that you carry yourself. And I think that's one of those rare gifts that some people have. But I believe that you can learn a lot of the skill. I think you can train yourself to be able to hold a client in your palm and really kind of let them know that they can trust you with this design and the money that they're spending, and, you know, that you have their best interest at heart, and they can trust you with the suggestions that you make. And that only comes from being absolutely convinced in what you can do.
Yes.
You have to be convinced in about what you're capable of.
Yes. And Jon, you have been in this design industry for you're running this ARRCC for almost 2 decades. So do you see that that because industry has evolved a lot in terms of the technological sense, so do you think that what new technological softwares are coming out there, either it is building information modeling or 3D modeling, do you think that these things are helping the designers community in the larger sense?
No, absolutely. I mean, we've always thrown a lot of energy into technology. You know, we started using Revit. I mean, we're a Revit-based office, which is an Autodesk product. But ultimately, Revit. We started using Revit when not many people were using Revit, because we kind of saw the future of design, you know, working in a 3-dimensional space as opposed to a 2D AutoCAD environment. Because it allowed us to really start challenging our work and pushing boundaries and, you know, expanding widths and becoming a little bit more daring with our design, because we're able to test these things on computers. So Revit really was the beginning for us. I mean, we started using Revit over a decade ago. I can't remember the exact date, but it was a while ago. And then from Revit, we then started getting into, at that point, we were having all of our renders done through 3D Studio Max. But then we kind of found this, a big developers when a software called Lumion came out. I'm not sure if you've heard of Lumion.
Yes.
But we started using Lumion internally, and we've been able to upskill ourselves on Lumion so much that we're actually doing so much of that internal rendering in-house, which means that we can update things faster. We don't have to wait for an external artist to get back to us. We're able to control that quality, as I mentioned earlier. But also for our clients, I mean, I'll send them a Revit view, a Lumion view in the morning, and they come back and say, I really don't like the bar and the marble's too dark. And I can have that updated and sent to them within an hour or two. You know, so we're able to really kind of get back and engage with our clients almost on a live basis.
Yes.
Then obviously the other big thing that we've thrown ourselves at is virtual reality, and which has really bridged the gap with our international clients. For example, there's a software that was developed by a company called the software is called LuxWalker. And LuxWalker is a virtual reality software that we load our Revit models into, and then we can put on the goggles, the Oculus, and we can actually connect with our clients overseas. So my client in LA will put the goggles on, and I will put the goggles on, and we can have a virtual site meeting, you know, through virtual reality. We can see each other, we can communicate, we can go to wherever we want in the building, and we can then, you know, mark these things up. We can we can use the software to really, you know, connect with our clients and give them a full picture of what they're getting. So absolutely, to answer your question more directly, technology has helped us immensely.
Yes.
But I think the balancing act and the tension that we have to facilitate is that it still doesn't take away from creativity. You can't use technology to create something that's emotionally connected. You know, maybe in the future this will become a little more of a possibility, but at the moment, I still believe in a pencil and paper. I still believe in sketching and collaborating, you know, through drawing. You know, for me, it's the only way I design. It's the way I was trained. But, you know, I've also trained the youngsters in my team to work that way as well, because it allows the mind to expand a little more openly. You know, software can maybe give you something a lot more accurate, but that poetry and that the emotional connection, I still believe comes very much from your hand. So I use all of them. I sketch, I draw, I render by hand sometimes. We use high-tech software. And I think when you bring them all together, you create a really beautiful practice.
Yes, and you just mentioned that since you have started using this virtual reality for your clients sitting abroad somewhere in LA or in New York, do you think that because you are directly in touch with all of your clients, so do you think that the client satisfaction in terms of understanding the project have gone by a certain level because of that virtual reality?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the one thing that sometimes we underestimate is that our clients and a lot of your clients don't understand how to read drawings. They don't quite understand the proportions or the scale of something. And this is where virtual reality has changed everything. I mean, you know, you're able to put on a pair of goggles and stand in the room and look under the coffee table and, you know, look down the passage and get a sense of how high the ceiling is. And, you know, you're able to really engage with the three-dimensional space at human scale.
Yes.
And you can see it. Some clients love it. Some clients put the goggles on and they just, it's wow, 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 wow. Other clients are slightly intimidated. I think it's, you know, some of our older clients are slightly intimidated. But the amazing thing is how fast everybody turns around.
Yes.
No matter how old they are, no matter what background they have,
Yes.
all of a sudden they're like, can we put it in VR? Can we have a look at it in VR? I want to see if this actually works. And, you know, so we end up using it as a design tool, not just a presentation tool.
Yes.
And I think that's where VR is very powerful, is that you can use it as a design tool to test your scale, to test the views. I mean, for example, I mean, we use Google Earth as well. So we position our buildings globally so we can see what you see through the guest bathroom window. You know, you can see there's the mountain peak. We can line the windows up so that they're perfectly aligned with whatever we want or don't want you to see. So we've really been able to get a lot more connected to our sites and to our experience.
We do one rapid fire round with our guests to make this.
Okay.
LA or New York?
LA.
Lamborghini or Ferrari?
Ferrari.
Whiskey or vodka?
Whiskey.
Modernism or contemporary?
Ooh, hard one. Modernism.
Okay, Cape Town or Johannesburg?
Cape Town.
Okay, thank you so much. With that said, it was very amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for giving
Thank
your
you.
time.